So here's a video for you. The shear that I actually show in this video went back to the stylist, and the stylist was actually very happy with the result of what I did. But understand, when you see this repair, or I don't even really want to call it a restoration, it's basically a rebirth with a few defects at the end. The shear itself did fine, but it still was not all the way back into pristine condition, simply because of the work that was done on the inside of the shear. So this video is more to show the work on the outside front surface and the reconvexing. But the customer was satisfied with the work, and since I've actually done this work, I've been back to that customer and have actually sold them another pair of shears as well. So this shear has become their backup shear. So ended up all working out well in the end for the customer. But keep in mind that when you're dealing with severely beat up and, for all intents and purposes, ruined shears like these, you can only do so much, so don't expect too much of yourself or the shear when it's done. Remember, it's easy to take a Cadillac and turn it into a Pinto. It's not always easy to take a Pinto and turn it back into a Cadillac. But with that said, I just wanted to say a special thanks to our sponsor today, which is the Edge Pro. We're thankful for them and for all that they do for the industry. We're thankful for the work that they do in training, and also with support for parts for clippers and clipper blades, and for the Nebraska blade units that they sell for clipper blade sharpening that many of us use. They're a wonderful company, great to work with, and if you ever have any questions, you can always reach out to them. There'll be a link to them below the video in the drop down box. So if you'd like to go and see them, tell them that you saw them here, and I appreciate that. Anyhow, just wanted to say thanks very much for watching, and if you have any questions, just go ahead and give me a shout. My contact information will be below as well. Hey there. So I want to take a little bit of time and shoot a quick video just showing how to do a repair on a scissor that just has quite a bit of damage on the front surface from a previous sharpener, and then also not fully polished on the front surface. So if we take a look right here, you can actually see on this shear you've got a very, very bull-nosed edge on the shear itself. See if we can get that to come in some. Trouble with the making it look good here. So let's do this. We're gonna do a quick switcheroo. All right, so we'll come under the magnifier here. You can see that there is heavy surface scratches, and then you can see that there's multiple angles on the front edge. You can also see that the shear has been over sharpened into basically what would be like the crotch of the shear. Sorry, not the greatest term on the face of the planet. But right here, you can see this has just been over sharpened into this area right here. So almost like a bolster on a knife. You don't want to sharpen past this point. We'll take a look at the other blade, and you can see that we have similar problems on this side. And not quite as much of the polishing issue on the front surface, because it looks like the person was trying to avoid taking any of the lettering off. We may end up having to take some of that off when I do this. But overall, we're going to go ahead and get this fixed up and at least get it back into shape again on the front surface. On the inside, the ride line work is obviously not very good. We're going to see if we can clean that up the best that we can. This won't be perfect, and the customer knows this because we've already, oof, that one's bad. We've already reviewed this. You can see this one's hooked here on the tip, so I'm probably going to take this tip back just a little bit to make this work. So there's just a number of different things that we're going to work on to see if we can't correct this shear. So we'll go from here. All right, so I've taken the shears apart, and I'm going to go ahead and do some work on the inside of the shear. All right, so you can see I've redressed my stone before I do the work here. I'm going to go ahead and start by just working my shear on the stone. Come to a complete stop, lift off. Just wiping the shear down, I'm going to take a quick look at the ride line that I've created. It may be a little bit hard to see on the video, but I created a ride line over the top of the one that was on there already. But the issue is there was too much pressure that was put on the back side of the spine area of this shear. and that's really rounding the shear out and rolling the shear over. So what I'm trying to do now is just make sure that I have a good flat surface on the inside of the shear to actually run an edge up against. So even though this looks terrible on the inside, the actual sharpening will work on this. So it's been corrected as much as I can correct it without re-hollow grinding it. And this shear is really not worth re-hollow grinding for the customer and the cost that she would have to put into something like that. The reality is that most shears that are really mangled out on the in the work area, or the, I'm sorry, out in the industry, they're really not worth redressing the inside of the shear or doing anything on the inside of the shear besides just creating a good, proper, flat ride line that extends all the way out to the inside edge. Anything that you do beyond that usually isn't worth the cost. They're much better served just buying a new shear. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to wipe this down for the next blade here because there was a lot of gunk that came off of that one as well. And I don't want any scratching on the inside surface if I can help it. We'll work the inside of this one. See if we can get this to come up a little bit better. That ride area is coming off pretty heavy there too, which means there's a high spot in the ride. All right, let's take a look. And that's been corrected as much as I can correct it. So again, not a perfect job by any means, but we'll go ahead and we'll work the outside surface of that shear and correct this. All right, so when I do work on a shear like this, the main thing that I'm trying to do is make sure that I can take off the material that I need to take off as quickly as I can. So in this case, I'm going to switch to a brand new 30. Now, there's a couple of things I could do differently too if I wanted to. I could start with a 60 or an 80 micron grit, which is going to be a coarser grit than the 30, and actually rework the surface, but then I have to take a lot of the surface scratches off. So if I don't have to do, this is bullnosed, so I have a reasonable amount of work that I can do on this without having to completely rework this shear on this with a coarser grit, because that coarser grit's going to make more work for me on the back end. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead, I'll mask up, because there's going to be a lot of dust that's going to blow even though we have a vacuum head on this machine. Plus, I don't run the vacuum head on this machine too when I'm doing videos. So I'm always trying to protect my lungs, best thing that you can do as well. I'm going to start out by just doing some initial cuts into the back side of that bull nose, and I'm doing what's called a progressive edge. I'm stepping upwards, coming back down towards the edge, stepping back upwards. You can do this either freehand or with a fixture. The fixture is going to stop you at a dead 45. I've been doing freehanding for a long time. So you can actually see here, see if we can get this in a little better light, that I've recreated, or at least the start of, let's get this under the magnifier some. The beginning of a fully convex edge. So I need to do a little bit more about those angles that are there, and I need to make sure that I address this all the way to the edge. But you can see I'm going to have to come up further towards the spine, and I'm going to continue to work on this blade until I get this done. But essentially what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be working, trying to get that bull nose flattened back down into the front surface of the scissor. Then I'm going to start a sweeping motion to carry that convex front surface to the edge. And I'm going to continue to do that until I start to see my burr form. So I'm going to continue doing this work off camera, and then I'll show you the result after I'm done. Okay, so now that I've finished doing the convexing on the front surface, you can see that I've removed the majority of that bull nose and recreate a fully convex front surface again. And if you look at this in comparison to where the blade was before, you can see that there's a mock difference in how that blade looks. Try and do this without too much casting of the light. Let's cut this off and see if that looks any better. There you go. That might be a little better and easier to see. So you can see there's definitely a very heavy bull nose on this, and this has been straightened out on that front surface. So I did all that on the 30 micron. Now, one of the things I didn't mention too is I do keep a jar of water down by the side of me when I'm doing work like this, because I want to do a few swipes and then I cool the blade and I do a few swipes because I don't want to overheat the blade while I'm doing this as well. That's just another trick and another step that you can go through in order to be able to reduce any heat. You'd really, a lot of times you have to spend a little bit more time on your discs on these shears in order to be able to correct something like this. And you know, it just does overheat the shear, so you just got to be careful with that. So the edge is all the way up. I had a burr all the way down the inside, so this is looking a whole lot better right now than what it did. And we're going to go ahead and move on with the next steps in the process, which is going to be doing the second blade, and then we'll go through the polishing steps. All right, so next in line is going to be the polishing step. We're going to come in, start up the machine at full speed, polish that edge some. Just using light pressure at the edge because we don't want to roll it. Make sure that we remove all that burr. I'm going to do a couple of step-up runs. Now I'm going to do the polishing on the Convex. That's just a series of strokes. It's a sweeping motion similar to how I was doing when I was convexing on the front surface. I'm also going to do some progressive edges where I step up and down. And what that does is it helps to disturb the scratch pattern that's on the front surface. I'll get the tip a little bit better. We're going to continue this process until we have a fully polished front surface. All right, so we're back under the magnifier again, and you can see, set this down, see if we can see that any better. You can see that it's been fully polished on the front surface. The majority of the scratches have been removed, and we now have a fully reconvex blade. Now, the inside is not perfect, but the inside is a proper orientation to the edge, which means the geometry is fine. It's just not pretty. Might have to do a little bit of touch-up work on the tips, although the tips look like they're going to end up being okay. I did some corrective work on one of the blades, the one that was hooked out a little bit. I removed a little bit more material from this side, and we'll see if the tips close okay. But beyond that, you can see that this has been fully restored back to at least the full convexed edge on the front surface. The inside work, the only way to deal with that would be re-hollow grinding the shear, and that would be way too costly for this shear. In order to be able to do that, the customer would be better served purchasing another shear. So we'll put this back together in just a few minutes, and after I'm done with the remainder of the sharpening, and do a quick test cut, and we'll see how we did. All right, so I'm done with the actual sharpening step here on this, so we're going to go ahead and do a test cut on tissue. Nice clean cut all the way at the tip. We'll test this with some wet tissue and see how she does. And in this case, I'm going to bring it back into the customer too. Have her test it on here. So nice clean cut all the way to the tip. But I'm going to take this back into the customer and let her give this a test, but I feel very certain that this is going to do quite well. I just want to make sure that the shear sounds good and feels good to her, and make sure that she is completely happy. So the reality is when you run into a shear like this, the tough part is in this business is there's not money in scissor restoration. In this case, I'm not charging an additional correction charge on these shears because this is the first time that I've done work for this stylist. She worked at another salon before she came to the salon that I do work at. And I want to make sure that I correct everything that's wrong with the shear for her with no additional charge. I know that some people will charge additional for it, and I'm all for that. That's just not how I run my business. And there's nothing wrong with either way. If you feel as though you should charge the additional, that's fine. It doesn't take me that much longer, and I'm usually pretty quick with the other ones that I'm working with. So it kind of all balances out for me. But if this person uses the other sharpener again, then there would be the correction charge. because I'm not going to continue to fix someone else's work when they have my contact information to get in touch with me and bring me back in order to be able to fix any of the issues that they have with the shear, whether it's gone dull, dropped, nicked, whatever. I can usually be out within a week, be able to take care of that. And if need be, I can always send them a loaner as well. That's another thing that I do in my business, is if something happens to somebody's shears, especially at the places that I have to travel to, I'll send them a shear by mail to hold them over until I can get back, and then collect that back. And it gives me a good opportunity to sell a shear as well. So this shear has actually been fully corrected at this point. So we have a fully convexed front surface on both blades on the shear, fully polished. It's ready to go back to the customer. Just keep in mind that this is pretty high level work to be able to recreate the proper edges on this, and it does take a little bit of time, and it certainly takes a little bit of training to be able to do this. So hopefully this helps, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information will be below. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. So I hope this video inspired you to at least play around with some repairs like this. Remember, you can't always make something perfect, so keep that in mind. With that said, the equipment that you saw me using in this video, I actually sell that equipment. I also offer training for the industry as well. Contact for how you can go about ordering from me and or training with me will be below. And I do appreciate you all for watching, so have a great day. We'll see ya.